Hello Mzansi, you are listening to Farmers Inside Track, proudly brought to you by Food for Mzansi. I am your host Patricia Timbo and welcome to today's episode of Farmer Mentor. On today's episode, we welcome Andries Masoga, who is the founder and executive director of Mazeli Farming and Projects. Mr. Masoga was recently recognized as one of the finalists of Potato SA's Enterprise Development Program for his farm business that operates on 140 hectares in Avon, Limpopo. Thank you so much for making the time, Mr. Masoga. The name of your agribusiness is Mazeli Farming and Projects. Talk me through how you even started farming to begin with. You know, where did that start? Was a family that was already farming, or were you involved in another industry before you moved into farming? Start me right from the beginning of where farming started for you.
Mazeli Farming and Projects was registered in 2016. But before it was formally registered, it was operating as a backyard farming, operating by my wife, who was actually not necessarily doing farming, just to keep herself busy at home, planting spinach, carrots, beetroots at home for home consumption, because she always loved greening. As she was doing that, there was a surplus. And she was giving to the next door neighbors on a good heart, donating to the drop-in centers. But as and when the demands grew up, she started to sell the surplus at the backyard level. It is only after she realized that she has the clientele and the backyard is too small for her produce, we sat down and talked as husband and wife. And she came up with that proposal that, what is it that we can do? Because now our yard is too small to supply these people. That we have resolved to go to our traditional council to request more land. That is when the traditional council allocated at first only 10 hectares for us. And of which in that 10 hectares, we need to debush, we need to fence it, we need to prepare it. And at that time, there was no mechanization, nothing. Then we had to go to the Good Samaritans to prepare for us. And our first crop was planted 28 September 2017, which was the 4-hectare tomato. But was not specifically 4 hectare because there was a lot of space that were left, ultimately become a mixture of crops. In that 4 hectare, we planted tomatoes, was in bark, and the variety of the tomato was called Domingo, which has a very long shelf life. We planted some cabbage, we planted some beetroot, some carrots, some spinach, because we did not know what is it that we are doing then. But we actually wanted to continue with what we have been doing at home. Unfortunately, the tomato was supposed to start going in December 2017, but couldn't because the market was full. It was only in January 2018 when the tomato was extremely red, but not rotten, because shelf life of that variety is very long, that we discovered a new market called the Mozambican market. That is when our tomato was started to be taken in large quantities. And they finished them all. And we were selling very cheap because they were extremely red. At 15 rand per crate, 10 rand per crate, and so forth. Immediately after the tomato, then we planted butternut on a 4 hectare as well, which went very well and was supplied to one of our fresh produce in Limpopo, known as Usiame Fruit and Vegetable Market. 2019, 2021, remember, that was the peak time of what we call the COVID-19. But we've been planting, our main crop, we've been tomato, cabbage, and butternut. But in particular, our focus was on tomato. Up until 2021, when the Potato South Africa requested us to host an information day in our farm. In the information day, what they normally do, they provide you with 2 bags of fertilizers, 2 bags of 25 kg potato seeds, and they help you to plant those manually. So we managed to do that, and as and when, immediately after they'd done that, we went all out to source extra potato seeds, which is about 1 full bin. 1 full bin is almost 20 bags of 25 kg, but we planted them on drips. But fortunately enough, we managed to sell those potatoes because we harvested them in July. We managed to sell them to 1 truck of Mozambique, and the whole truck managed to give us 67,000, and that becomes the beginning of understanding what is a potato. But since then, Potato South Africa was taking us to the workshop without putting us into their program called Enterprise Development. In 2022, Potato South Africa does into that program. But unfortunately, when they put us in that program, we have already sourced a seed because we did not know that they are going to supply us with a seed. We sourced a store was not certified because they are only working on the certified seeds. Then we planted that potato in 2022. Unfortunately, the price was as bad as 2025. We were selling 1 bag of 10 kg at 28 rand, but managed to pay back the seeds that we have sourced. Fast forward to 2023, then we were fully into the program. Potato South Africa gave us a 6.5 because they've approved us on 6.5. And we had 10 hectare tolerable pivot. Then when they gave us the seeds on 6.5, then we had to buy extra 3.5 to make it 10. And the similar year, 2023, what we call PepsiCo or Simba also came into our rescue. In the inside, we say that 2022, around November, December, Simba came to us, gave us some forms to fill up, submit all the required documentations like audited financial statement and so forth. They gave lots of us. Unfortunately, we're very lucky. It was only Mazeli who complied and managed to qualify for that program of Simba. And now we find an offtake agreement with what we call Simba, or in another language, PepsiCo. Remember, Simba or PepsiCo is a multi-international company, so to say. And then Simba also come up with a funding model known as what we call Khudiso Development Fund. So in 2023, they have approved a loan of 1.2 million for us, which goes towards seeds, goes towards chemicals, goes towards electricity, energy, and maybe 1 labor who's going to take care of that crop. But the variety that we are planting for Simba, the most difficult one in terms of yield, and is susceptible to what we call late blight, the diseases. It's not resistant to the diseases.
Which variety is that?
Yeah, Frederick Lace 2108. We call it FL2108. That is 2023. 2023, we have planted 10 hectare mondial, which we sell to the Mozambican market. We have an agreement with the Mozambican market, though it's informal. 10 hectares should be planted for PepsiCo. That is 2023. But we managed to perform better on mondial, but we couldn't perform better on the PepsiCo one. After paying all the debts from what we call Khudiso Development Fund, we managed to take home 26,000 only. But what made us happy is we are still going to present for them. So they wanted to increase the hectares for us. But we said, no, we can't increase much as we did not perform well. We did not know the variety. Gave us another space so that 2024, we can still plant 10 hectares. But the development fund or the loan was increased to 1.5. 2024, if you could remember, that was the year when all farmers experienced what we call a black frost.
Yes, I remember during the winter in Limpopo.
Yeah, in Limpopo. And we were one of those farmers who were hit by that black frost. But fortunately enough, when the black frost came, we were almost 3 weeks to 4 weeks before harvest. And our crop were taken care of very carefully. Then we managed to be the best at the level of the 10 hectares. Immediately after paying the loan, and we are also planting what we call mondia. In 2024, we managed to plant 15 hectares of mondia when we were hit by a black frost. But the mondial was still small, which could not be hit by a black frost. So we performed well on FL, and we performed well again on what we call mondia. And the price was very good on mondia. We were selling almost at 90 to 80 rand, 10 kg. At the farm level, at the market level, they were selling at around 130, 140. But because we are still behind, we are still on the verge of being commercial, but we are still the transformation farmer. We lack lots of things, which I think I'm going to mention at a later stage. What is it that we want? Remember, like as I was saying, Mazeli Farming and Projects is almost a family business because the wife is working here, I'm working here. Our son, who graduated in a BCom law degree, is also working in the farm. For the purpose of succession, instead of going all out to find job, then we have resolved the best way is to bring in our own children so that when God decides, whatever investment should always be in the good hands. And what made us happy is the son has a passion for farming and also schooled. 2025. Remember, I did not talk about the butternut. I mentioned the potatoes. But if time allows us, I'm still going to go back to the question of butternut. And I'm still going to go back to the question of Peppadew, because we are also planting for Peppadew on an offtake agreement. Because our plan is to be contract farmers. 2025, we are still on the potatoes. We planted 20 hectares for FL or for PepsiCo. We planted 16.5 for Mondial. Harvested in August, PepsiCo, and the loan was 3.3 million. And we managed to pay back that money and took some. Already in October, we harvested 10 hectares Mondial and managed to pay some loans, of which I'm still going to tell you about the loans. Those are the funders that we always aspired to have as black farmers. And then next week on the 17th, we are going to harvest 16.5 of Mondial. The performance as and when we check is good. But in farming, we always say, never say the crop is yours up until you have the money in your pocket.
Not even after harvesting, only once you have the money.
Only when you have the money in your pocket, then the crop is yours. Because the crop is climate controlled. There are a number of natural that may happen even when you're supposed to harvest. And it happened to us when we were still planting tomatoes. So always the money must be in your pocket, and you said the crop is yours. So let us not talk about what we are going to harvest starting from next week. But remember, when we were harvesting this 10 hectares, we applied for a mechanization with the Department of Agriculture, which is 20%, 80%. And approved, managed to pay our own 20%, that is farmers' contribution. I think that is the new policy because the department have been giving farmers everything for free, but farmers were not taking care of what was coming to them for free. So they always wanted 20% because they know once you paid a certain amount of money, you will take care of it because the money is yours. So when we were harvesting this 10 hectares in October, which we finished on the 24th, the MEC of Agriculture was also here handing over the tractor to us. And we managed to hire 160 Filipino local people for harvesting peppers. That made us very happy and proud because now the community is involved. We managed to bring the activity on the doorstep of our own community. That is on record, 160 Filipino workers. Maybe in conclusion related to the potatoes, our plan is to plant 25 hectares of FL 2026 plus 26.5 hectares Mondial 2026. But in our back, as I speak to you, coming to the funders, we have what we call the DKP, which is assisting us on Peppadew. The qualifications are very important, but I think we'll come to that at a later stage if there will be a question based on that. We have what we call Khudiso Development Fund. We further have what we call Kula, which is very recent, and ultimately our own contribution, because on their own, they are not going to make Mazeli to be what we are aspiring it to be. Allow me to go back to another offtake agreement. In 2023, we started planting what we call Peppadew with Peppadew International. 2023, we planted with what we call Miami, was also an offtake agreement. But we could not honor the agreement based on the contract. And in 2024, we started to plant with what you call Peppadew International. We planted 10 hectares with International. 2025, we also planted 10 hectares. Why do we plant 10 hectares? Why do we plant less on PepsiCo? Because of what you call land availability. Our land is too small. But Peppadew International gave us the latitude to plant up to 20 hectares, but we couldn't because of land. The PepsiCo wanted us to plant as much as we can. Even if you can plant up to 300 hectares, with PepsiCo, you are allowed. But we can't because of what you call the spacing. But every year in January, we are planting 10 hectares only of the butternut. And 2026, we are also going to start to plant onion, but we are going to start at 5 hectares, on a 5 hectare, because that will be our first time planting.
You've walked us through the journey over the years since 2017, and before that when your wife was a backyard farmer. And it's very inspiring, of course, to hear your story and your wife's effort into the backyard farming that birthed the successful business that you're running. But to go back in terms of the land, I just want to check, you're operating on 140 hectares of land where you've been granted permission by the tribal chiefs of the area. Maybe if you could speak about that, because I know there are a lot of farmers who have challenges when it comes to negotiating land from tribal authorities. Maybe if you can just reflect on that and how you've been able to get this agreement of 140 hectares.
Remember, the traditional chiefs or the traditional council do not sell the land to an individual, and they are taking care of the land on behalf of the community. So the land does not belong to us. They made it very clear. We give you the land so that you can practice what we want, which is farming, so that you can be able to create jobs for the local. As and when we lease the land, in fact, we are also paying a certain amount but very nominal. We are paying a certain amount every year to the tribal council to show that indeed we are using the land profitably. And we also give them a report. How many people have we managed to employ and so forth? And how many drop-in centers, how many schools, football, that we make donations. Though we don't make donations in monetary form, but whatever produce should go to the drop-in center. And as and when you make donations into a form of food to the drop-in centers, most households are assisted. As and when you employ the local people, remember, historically, one person employed is equals to feeding 5 people on Mars. So if we manage to employ close to 160 local people, in other words, even if it's a short period, we have managed to feed almost 800,000 for a smaller Ghana period. And that is what makes the tribal chiefs happy. But not all were sourced from the tribal council. We also negotiated with the oldies. Some of the lands belongs to our parents, our grandparents, which were used as dry lands. But because they are getting older, then we negotiated with them. Whoever agree to give us the land, then we take the land to the tribal council for authority's sake. But we don't send the tribal council to negotiate on our behalf. Some were vacant. Some were belonging to our parents. When I say our parents, I'm not referring to the parents that gave me birth, the local parents. And we negotiated with them a lot. And some, we gave them something to put on the table so that we can be able to access the land. But we don't just do it. Immediately after agreement, we go to the council to formalize it. But maybe to answer your question, how did you manage to maneuver? It's always very critical. We are living in a village, and all villages are characterized by the traditional concept. And in no way you can be able to thrive in a village if you ignore a better relationship with the tribal authorities. If you ignore having a better relationship with community, though there are some challenges with the community members, but try as much as possible to have a better relationship with them.
It is quite clear how you've explained it, that it is an agreement in that you are also stimulating the village. It's Avon Village under the local municipality where you're operating the farm. I understand now that's really an agreement between yourself, the farming business, and the tribal authorities to say that you are giving back to the community and you're creating opportunities and stimulating the economy through utilizing the land. It sounds like that is the most important aspect when it comes to the negotiations, that the authority, they are seeing how it's feeding back into the community and it's not just you farming on the land.
On the very same theme, madam, as you mentioned, the stimulation of economic growth in the community. Remember, we are in the center of the community and there are a number of hawkers. If we sell one potato at 40 rand on farm level, the local hawkers also buy at 40 rand and sell within the very same community. So the economy within the community is growing and the money is circulating within our own. And not only that, I don't know whether you've ever been to one of the farms when they harvest the potatoes. Not all potatoes will be sold to the market. Whatever is left, immediately after we are done with the harvesting, everybody, irrespective of whoever, as long as the community, they come to the field, doing whatever, so that they can be able to have a relish at their respective home.
Mr. Masoga, you've definitely expanded on how you started off with tomatoes and then gone into potatoes and peppadew and butternuts. You said we'll go back to the butternuts. So diversifying has been, of course, very important for the farming business, starting off with tomatoes. Maybe if you can talk us through that. I know you also have a livestock enterprise, how diversification has helped the business and stay sustainable and unlock financing, but also the markets for you by being a diverse farmer. Can you please maybe speak about that?
Like as I've explained at the beginning, it was not a funny, both the crop and the livestock. We had some few goats and sheep at home, less than 10 combined. We had about 4 cows, which were also not meant for any form of business. Our plan is we wanted to draw the difference between us living in the village and those living in the urban area. If somebody is living in the urban area and is very competent on what is available in the urban area, now, what is it that you are competent with that makes you to be a good villager? You must have livestock. Almost 80% of every household have got some 1, 2, 3 goats, sort of a norm. Also some sheep, some cows. I want to assure you, instead of taking our livestock to the market, we are also getting a very support from the community. Almost every week, we may sell about 4 to 5 goats or 4 to 5 sheep. When we were financing for the tractor that I spoke about, we managed to sell some of our cows so that we can be able to make our own contribution. So it is always very important. Remember, we are farming in Limpopo and we are situated in a region called Capricorn region, which is characterized as a potato belt. That's number 1. Number 2, the very same region, that is where the variety of the cow known as Bonsmara originated. Now we have moved to what we call the Bonsmara, because the language here is, as long as you are in vivo and a farmer, you have to plant potatoes and have Bonsmara. And that is what we are doing, and is helping us a lot.
I also have come across that you have other enterprises, and that's like a taxi business and rental properties. Why is it important for you to diversify even beyond farming? Is it to ensure cash flow or just sustainability in terms of finances? What is the reason for having diverse beyond agriculture as well?
Allow me to mention one adage. Putting all your eggs in one basket is risky sometimes. But going back to this other form of businesses, rental and taxis, is for cash flow. Remember, all of us are working in the farm, and we are also entitled to what anyone who's working for the government, who's working for the bigger companies, is entitled for medical aid and no subsidy here. And we must be able to pay for that medical aid. Okay. And we have to cover almost everybody in the family for a medical aid.
The permanent employees as well?
No, this is for family use, because we are earning as per the basic requirement of the farmer. The entry level of farming, that is what all of us earning, so that we can be able to afford it, because the farm is still too small. But for cash flow, like as we have mentioned, is also what motivated us to go to diversify into other form of business. Maybe lastly, in farming, we don't harvest every month. If sometimes at a particular month, the money left in the account could only cover the permanent employees and the casual, one among us will not get his salary. And his salary will then be covered somewhere by other form of business. But cash flow is very important. The inflation is very high.
Mr. Masoga, I think that's a very responsible way, of ensuring that there is cash flow within the business. We touched on challenges earlier, and we know with most farmers in South Africa, there is the challenge of funding. I know farmers who would listen to this podcast would really take a lot of value from your journey in acquiring funding and how you have responsibly also utilized the funding you've gotten. So maybe if you can talk us through funding, the challenges you've had, but also how you've managed to steward the funding you've acquired as well with the business.
Some of us, especially the starters, including ourselves at the beginning, we thought maybe farming is just one of those things. So we did not regard farming as a business. And for you to regard farming as a business, you will always make sure you make the best administratively. Because failure to organize yourself administratively, no potential farmer will come closer to you because you will not be able to pay him back. And to organize yourself administratively, you also have to employ, because it's one area that always we are undermined. A professional administrator who will always work hand in glove with the appointed accountant of the business. As and when the rest of the team are taking care of the crops, but they should be able to report. The line of reporting is also very critical. Not only organizing yourself administratively, be able to pay your debt, service your debt on time as per arrangement. Furthermore, no potential farmer will come to you if you don't have an offtake agreement. No matter you sell at 2 million, 10 kg or back, but your market is not guaranteed. So how are you going to service your debt? So the potential funder is not giving you a grant, it's funding you with an interest. The land bank, I've forgotten to mention the land bank, is one of the most thickest bank in the country. For you to come closer to you, and of course, it's one of our partners in business. They check every dot, but the major prerequisite is an offtake agreement. So offtake agreement, no matter how small the money is very, very important. But most of the farmers, as the business people, we consider money more than the value of the business.
Of course, it's important for the farmer to have secured an offtake agreement so that they are able to pay off.
Very important.
Yes. And when it comes to getting an offtake agreement, for a farmer who's been struggling, what is the advice that you have to secure offtake agreements?
Like as I said at the beginning, you can't secure an offtake agreement if you haven't organized yourself administratively. Not all farmers will make an inspection in loco at your farm. Some will rely on documents you send to them. So organize yourself administratively. Potential funds are funders out there. Potential markets is there, it's waiting for you. Remember, in this country, though it's a subject of argument at the level of the lawmakers, and 99% of the people who are struggling in this sector because it's capital intensive are the black people. Sorry to say that. There is a law which is in the constitution that black economic empowerment, which most of the companies, for them to be able to operate well, must comply with that law. Administration, because that is where the funders make sure you grow. That is where the market will also come to you.
In our previous interviews as well with agricultural economists, they really stress the importance of farmers formalizing their business to even get access to funding. So it's good that you've mentioned. Thank you for speaking about that from the farmer perspective as well. Farmers actually really hear what you're saying and that it's important to stay on top of the administration of the business. Now we can go into the principles that have guided you as a farmer. It's challenging to be a farmer. What has kept you going? What has kept you pouring into the business when things did get difficult? As you've mentioned, you had Black Frost last year, also affected your business. So what are the principles that have kept you going with the farming business?
The underlying principle, which is according to is the cornerstone of every business, which does not exclude farming, is commitment. Commitment, commitment, commitment. The business is not yours. The business must always be able to plow back into the business. Not all the income coming into the business belongs to you. Not all the profits that you generate out of the business come back to you. Must go back to the business again. And why do I say that? Based on the question of commitment. Business has never been stable anywhere in the world. There are up and downs of the business because it involves money. It involves the markets. Any form of business has got to do with the market. So when the market's very slow, and it also involves the natural disasters, man. Natural disasters are everywhere. And no one can predict that in 2028 there will be natural disasters. So when the business is down, like when there is a black frost, when there is a flood, when the business is down, when there is a high heat wave, where you are not going to make a profit, you must be able to move forward. You must be able to go back into the business and compromise. As the leader of the business, your employees will always believe you are making money, but also make sure you always take them into confidence. Don't hide a lot from your employees so that when the business is down, they must all see that the business is down. They must not expect beyond what you can, but remain the workforce of the business. So compromise, take your employees into confidence and move with them. Then you will arrive.
Thank you, Mr. Masoga, for that. Congratulations on being the finalist of the Enterprise Development Program. Because we know the Potato SA's Enterprise Development Program, how much they have supported you. I wanted to ask with that, of course, that means you're leaving a legacy behind to be recognized for prestigious awards such as this one. What is the legacy you want to leave behind for your son specifically as well? Because he will be succeeding the farming business.
It's every business person's wish to be at the level of a commercial. And it's our wish as well that we can be at the commercial level, but leaving certain principle with our sons. Not necessarily the money, the assets, and whatever the case may be, because that can be finished within a minute. The principle of any business. And once you leave those principles with your son and make sure he's following them, and he must start to follow them while you are still with him, it's going to make it. So those principles are very much important. Unless if maybe I should be able to mention what are those principles. The planning, the organizing, the leading, the controlling of the business. Those are some of the principles that every person should leave as a legacy to the young ones, not the money. It's only following the principles that you can be able to increase the money. It's only following the principle that you can be able to increase the assets.
Thank you, Mr. Masoga. To close off the interview, I know you wanted to go back to butternut, and I also wanted to ask a bit more about the Peppadew because it's more of a niche crop, how you ventured into that. And also you wanted to speak again about the butternut, so maybe if you can do so, please.
Let me start with what you call the Peppadew. Remember, area we plant Peppadew from September. Mid-January, we start with the harvesting. And as per our contract, harvesting should take us up to 30 pests in lay, and of which is almost full 7 months. Having your own employees, though they are seasonal, but you manage to employ them for a period of 7 months. And the longer you take with the similar employees, is the more you become one family, understanding each other, understanding the requirement of the business that you are all employed by. And immediately after ending the harvest, June, we start harvesting the butternut. Like I said, we are planting butternut in January. By April, they're okay. We leave them to harden, but we start giving them water. Yeah. So we always make sure we plan that immediately after harvesting, ending harvesting what you call Peppadew, we must be able to harvest the butternut so that we can still keep our people at work. Then July, that is what we are planning to do 2026. Like as I've indicated, we are planning to plant onion. So by July, we should be harvesting the onion. August, we start harvesting potatoes for PepsiCo. September, October, we start harvesting Mondial. November, we start taking out weeds, waiting for Peppadew. So we end up having a cohort of people that we are almost working with them, but they are not permanent. That's precisely what makes us sometimes happy. And it also makes sure it's keeping our feet on the ground, because every day we wake up and come back to work because there is something to be done.
Planning and timing is a very important aspect of running a farming business. As I can hear, timing is everything. And to close off this conversation, you've already shared so much advice, for a farmer. So if there's anything that you haven't touched on that is important for a new entrant farmer to know, what would that be?
Farmers, especially the historical disadvantaged one, what they must always know and understand, they are not competitors. They should always supplement each other, complement each other, work together. Once they learn how best can they work together, I'm assuring you, they're going to make it. Organize themselves into cooperatives so that the government can be able also to come on board in terms of mechanization. Because individually, farming is one of the most expensive. Like as I've indicated, it's capital intensive. So one bigger mistake that we are also making is to compete against each other. We take each other as competitors, while all of us are not even making a percentage of a farmer in the country. We forget that beside the profits that we want to make, because that is the core of the business, we are contributing toward food security in our own respective villages, in our own respective provinces or regions, in the country, internationally.
I love that you're saying it's important for farmers to supplement, support, to work together to achieve success, as you've said. It's a very important point. Thank you, Mr. Masoga, for the time that you have taken to share your insights and your wisdom as into farming and getting to the commercial level. I'm quite sure farmers who are listening will be inspired and also challenged by you.
Thank you very much for reaching to us as Mazeli, and we are very much happy to have spoken to people like yourself at that particular platform. Please do what you have done to us, to others.
And that was Andries Masoga. For more information, you can visit www.foodformzansi.co.za. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. From me, Patricia Tembo, our technical producer, Megan van der Vent, and the rest of #Team Food for Mzansi, thank you for listening.